Good evening, everybody. I hope you're having a good evening. It's still pretty chilly here in northern Colorado. It's going to warm up this coming week, but right now it's still pretty chilly. We had some actually record-breaking cold the past week. Tonight I want to read from Ezekiel 38 and talk about the Russian invasion of Ukraine and how that might relate to Bible prophecy, because Russia and some of the nations involved in the Middle East right now are mentioned in the Bible, believe it or not. What's interesting, though, is that America is not mentioned. There's no mention of America or the United States in Bible prophecy anywhere, as far as I can tell, and a lot of Bible experts say the same thing. Ezekiel 38, a message for Gog. Now, Gog and Magog, many Bible experts, prophecy experts, and people who know a lot more about Bible history and geographical history than I do, seem to think that this Gog and the land of Magog means Russia, or at least southern Russia. So they are mentioned here. So if they're correct, then Russia is mentioned in Bible prophecy from thousands of years ago. Ezekiel 38, a message for Gog. This is the New Living Translation, because this is easily understandable and it speaks very plainly. This is another message that came to me from the Lord. Son of man, turn and face Gog of the land of Magog, the prince who rules over the nations of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. Give him this message from the sovereign Lord. Gog, I am your enemy. Or other words, I'm against you. Other versions say, I will turn you around and put hooks in your jaws to lead you out with your whole army, your horses and charioteers in full armor, and a great horde armed with shields and swords. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya will join you too with all their weapons. Gomer and all its armies will also join you, along with the armies of Beth Togarmah from the distant north, and many others. Get ready, be prepared, keep all the armies around you mobilized, and take command of them. A long time from now, you will be called into action. In the distant future, you will swoop down on the land of Israel, which will be enjoying peace after recovering from war, and after its people have returned from many lands to the mountains of Israel. You and all your allies, a vast and awesome army, will roll down on them like a storm and cover the land like a cloud. This is what the sovereign Lord says. At that time, evil thoughts will come to your mind, and you will devise a wicked scheme. You will say, Israel is an unprotected land filled with unwalled villages. I will march against her and destroy these people who live in such confidence. I will go to those formerly desolate cities that are now filled with people who have returned from exile in many nations. I will capture vast amounts of plunder, for the people are rich with livestock and other possessions now. They think the whole world revolves around them. But Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish will ask, do you really think the armies you have gathered can rob them of silver and gold? Do you think you can drive away their livestock and seize their goods and carry off plunder? Therefore, son of man, prophesy against Gog. Give him this message from the sovereign Lord. When my people are living in peace in their land, then you will rouse yourself. You will come from your homeland in the distant north with your vast cavalry and your mighty army, and you will attack my people Israel, covering their land like a cloud. At that time in the distant future, I will bring you against my land as everyone watches, and my holiness will be displayed by what happens to you, Gog, and then all the nations will know that I am the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord asks. Are you the one I was talking about long ago when I announced through Israel's prophets that in the future I would bring you against my people? But this is what the sovereign Lord says. When Gog invades the land of Israel, my fury will boil over. In my jealousy and blazing anger, I promise a mighty shaking in the land of Israel on that day. Or a great earthquake, other translations say. There'll be a great earthquake. All living things, the fish in the sea, the birds of the sky, the animals of the fields, the small animals that scurry along the ground, and all the people on earth will quake in terror at my presence. Mountains will be thrown down, cliffs will crumble, walls will fall to the earth. I will summon the sword against you on all the hills of Israel, says the sovereign Lord. Your men will turn their swords against each other. I will punish you and your armies with disease and bloodshed. Some other translations say a pandemic. I will send torrential rain, hailstones, fire, and burning sulfur. In this way I will show my greatness and holiness, and I will make myself known to all the nations of the world. Then they will know that I am the Lord. Okay, so Ezekiel 38. I've heard really good Bible teachers, Bible expositors, people who know a lot more about Bible history, who have PhDs in Bible history and stuff like Bible prophecy, that know a lot more than I do, who say that Ezekiel 38 is a prophecy of the end times. And it says right there, in the last days, or in the latter days. Some versions say in the latter days or the last days. So, to me, and to many other scholars, clearly this is about the last days, the end times before the return of Jesus Christ. It's pretty obvious to me. And these nations that are mentioned here, Gog, Magog. Gog is a person, apparently, and Magog is his land, his nation. And then it says the prince who rules over the nations of Meshech and Tubal. And Bible experts, prophecy experts, and people with PhDs in history think that that means Russia. And these other nations that are mentioned here, it says a great horde armed with shields and swords. Persia is today modern day Iran. It's the same land. Persia is today Iran, which is ruled by radical Islamists. They have since '79. Ethiopia, that one's obvious. Libya, that's obvious. Some other versions say Cush and Put. That means Northern Africa. They are also Islamic nations, which I find kind of fascinating. Will join you too with all their weapons. Gomer, it mentions. Gomer, I've seen Bible experts and historians say that Gomer could mean parts of Eastern Europe and even maybe as far as Germany. That Gomer will join with this Gog and Magog, who a lot of people say is Russia. Gomer may be parts of Europe. And its armies will join you along with armies of Beth Togarmah. And there are some scholars today that think Beth Togarmah is Turkey. Now, I just saw a website, I think it was the Jerusalem Post, and an article from 2021, just last year, that showed Vladimir Putin in a picture with the leader of Turkey, Recep Erdogan, who's a dictator. an Islamic dictator who rules by power and force, and the Iranian leader. And those are three of the nations mentioned right here in Ezekiel 38. They're already making an alliance. Russia today already has some troops in Syria. Syria is one of these nations that's in this prophecy. So here today we have Russia, Gog and Magog, Meshach and Tubal. We have Persia is Iran, Beth Togarmah is Turkey, and they're already making alliances. And Russia already has troops in Syria, which is just right above Israel, isn't it? It's just right above it. Syria is right next to Israel. And Turkey and Iran are right in the same region, the Middle East. So these alliances of Ezekiel 38, written thousands of years ago, are beginning to form this very day. And now, what 3 days ago, Vladimir Putin decides to invade Ukraine. And he's like a schoolyard bully. But Putin has always been like that. He's a schoolyard bully. He, if an insurrection or if protests begin to happen in Russia, I've seen it over the last, 10 years. If protests start in Russia and they protest election, he squashes them like bugs. The guy's a dictator. And yet I see that some Americans and some Christians even, that kind of idolize, they have a fanboy club for Vladimir Putin, like he's some kind of rock star or something. I'm like, wait a minute. This guy is former KGB. He's a dictator. He rules by an iron fist. And some of you people here in America, and you want to be his fanboy, like, have a bromance with Vladimir Putin. To me, that's just kind of stupid. He's a dictator. He's invading Ukraine right now. He did the same thing, about 8 years ago. He invaded and took over, Crimea? The guy just, runs right into countries and starts running over them, which is not much different than what Hitler did, 75 years ago. And yet I see Americans and some Christians in this country, saying that, oh, Putin's a great guy. He's a strong leader. I'm like, yeah, he's a strong leader, all right. He's a strong armed leader. Putin is a communist. He's former KGB. That guy is hard-nosed. And he squashes any protests in his own country. I mean, he just smashes them. And yet I see Americans kind of, having a bromance with this guy. To me, that just makes no sense whatsoever. And here in Bible prophecy, and I mean, people who know a lot more about the Bible than I do. I'm talking, people with PhDs that have studied the Bible, in college for, 15 years. And they say that this Gog and Magog and Meshach and Tubal are most likely Russia. And these other nations are pretty obvious, and they're already making an alliance. And so you have to ask, I have to ask myself, are things beginning to line up for the Ezekiel 38 war? Because Russia already has troops in Syria. They already have troops in the Middle East, right above Israel. Our leaders right now, the leaders we have, Biden, Kamala Harris, Putin, and Xi, the Chinese dictator, Putin, they don't respect Biden. They certainly don't respect Kamala Harris. I think they kind of laugh at them. Putin knows that Biden is an old, dementia-laden man who is not very coherent. He's running all over Biden. And look what he's doing. That's exactly what he's doing. He just ran right into the Ukraine three days ago and started a war And Biden and NATO are kind of like, shaking and twiddling their thumbs, and they're not quite sure what to do. I mean, Biden just yesterday had a press conference, and he was bumbling around, and he said, well, I don't know about that. And journalists was asking him questions, and I don't know about this, and I don't know about that, and I don't know what Putin is thinking by invading like this. I don't know what he's thinking and why he's doing this. I mean, he seems like a very confused old man. And believe me, Putin can see it because that guy's smart. He's a dictator, but he's smart. And Z, the same way. Z is probably licking his chops. He wants to get Taiwan, And here in Bible prophecy, it's talking about some of these very nations. To me, it's like, how can you ignore what the Bible says? How can you ignore it? It's talking about the very nations that we're seeing becoming aligned right now. There's another mention in other parts of Bible prophecy about the kings of the east, that the kings of the east will come across and cross the Euphrates River, and some scholars think that could mean China, the kings of the east. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? But here in Ezekiel 38, Bible prophecy is beginning to take shape, at least as far as I can tell. I'm certainly no expert, but I have some discernment, and I've been reading this stuff, and I've heard Bible preachers, I've heard really good preachers talking about the Ezekiel 38 war and Gog and Magog for over 30 years, and it seems to me like we're getting pretty close to this with a very aggressive Russia and Putin, and the West can't seem to stand up to him. What's interesting is that America, the United States, is not mentioned in any of this prophecy. It's not mentioned. There's some passing references that some people might think that could be maybe Western coastlands, the ships of Western coastlands, and other prophecy, the ships of Kittim. But I don't think that that's meaning the United States. If anything, it could mean possibly at the farthest west, maybe England, or most likely these ships of Western coastlands in prophecy probably mean the coasts of Italy or Sicily is most likely what it means. I don't know. I think we need to be praying. We need to be praying for Ukraine and praying for restraint from the dictator Putin, and praying for our own leaders that they get some smarts and some intelligence and some backbone to try and figure out how to deal with this aggressive dictator in Russia, Putin, and what they're going to need to do with this guy. Because if it goes on, then I think Z might just take that as a green light and say, well, look, the West did nothing about, they didn't do anything about invading Ukraine, so maybe we should start making moves towards Taiwan because they want Taiwan. And these dictators in these countries, they smell weakness. They smell weakness from Biden, and we need to be praying for our leaders that they get some backbone and some smarts and start figuring out how to deal with this stuff. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about. So I'll play now, and then we'll end out this video. Thanks for watching.